collector.
Was he? Are you sure he was the tax? I always thought Simon.
I'll put 20 on it. Let's bet on the Bible.
What version do you have?
I don't know, King James, but I'm certain. I
have the modern New Testament from the Aramaic. It's a direct translation from the Aramaic language.
So look it up. Look it up. Yeah.
Matthew, oh my God.
Simon Peter's the fisherman.
Well, there was Matthew, Simon, and then
there were two Simons. Simon Bartholomew.
Two Simons. I'm
Simon
sure. Yeah, Simon Bartholomew.
Simon Paul. Peter, Paul.
Simon Smith, doesn't really matter.
But he changed his name to Paul or Peter. I think it's Paul.
Yeah, Peter, Paul. The high priests were thinking of killing Lazarus. That's early on. Oh no, he's already got his disciples by then. Oh, I'm too far past it. I'm too far gone. Oh, hang on.
Lazarus.
I've had a Lazarus moment. It was rather prophetic. It was quite bizarre. It was just quite bizarre.
Do tell.
I don't really remember it clearly. It's like I had a moment of purification by fire as well, and I don't remember that clearly either. There's a lot of things that have gone by that, like 25 years ago now, that when I was trying to find, and when I say Lazarus, I don't mean calling somebody back from the dead, but I'm speaking the word and having something happen actually as I spoke the word, which confirmed to me that it only happened because I spoke the word. You know? It's like even the other day I was doing a video and there was a bug. This is kind of silly. There was a bug, like a horsefly. I don't know if you have horseflies in America, like the big flies.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there making my video out on the deck and it's buzzing around my head and whatever. And I made a comment of it actually in my video, I think. And I said to the horsefly, I just looked at it and I said, "Begone," something like that. And, you know, with the authority of God. And it went, you know, but like horseflies never go away until you kill them or until they get blood. They will just, once they know that you're a living, hot-blooded thing, they will not ever go away. That's the only one. I mean, it's not as magnificent as calling Lazarus out of the.
That is smelly.
I know, but it's kind of funny. I thought there's another one, but I had one. I can't for the life of me remember it. It was something like that. I just said something and something happened. But it's like, and then I had a moment with fire. I can sort of remember the fire one where I don't remember why I did it, right? But I went down to the beach one day. There's a bit in the Bible that says if you have faith, you can handle snakes and things like that. And there's another bit in the Bible somewhere. The fire of God will not burn you or something like that. And of course, I don't know what book that's in, but it's something. I may be getting it wrong, but anyway, in my misinterpretation of it, I thought I'm going to go and test this out, right? And I went down to the beach and I dug a hole in the sand, like about that deep, and put some sticks and twigs in, and I set a little fire. And I had this big stick. You know how people walk on the hot coals and they don't get burnt?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if that's a trick or what, or if it's just fake. But anyway, I had this stick and it's on fire. I blew the fire out, pulled the stick out of my fire, and I drew it across my arm, right, in faith. And it's like I have faith in God that I'm not going to get burnt. And I didn't get burnt, right? It was bizarre. I didn't get burnt. And then, like the doubt of Moses,
right?
So I did it again to see if it actually happened, and I did.
Which is doubt, yeah. Which is doubt.
I know.
Let me make sure I had faith.
I don't know if you can see it on my crappy camera, but I still have the burn scar there on my arm.
Wow. Oh, yeah. I do see it. Wow.
where I put the stick across.
There's proof. There's a body.
I know, but it's funny. It's like when you're going through your stuff, you know, it's like, and you get these ideas in your head. It's like of faith, and it's like, man, you want to have faith, and you want to be able to take a leap of faith about things, just so that you know you've got faith. And it's like, because faith is its own reward. And so I went through this whole thing of pushing my faith, or testing my faith, and making sure that I had faith. I did all these crazy things. I can't even remember. There was a period of about probably 6 months where I couldn't think of enough things to do to put myself into situations where my only way out would be faith. You know, one of the craziest ones was climbing the mountain. But it was accidental. I didn't realize that it was going to end up being an act of faith. But climbing the mountain at Mount Warning, where I first saw Jesus, in my jeans and a t-shirt, and I had a leather buckskin jacket with all the fringes on and all these hippie patches and stuff on it. My friend had told me that on a full moon, right? So I don't know if you know the story of it, but it's in my book. But
you told it a little bit, but I never heard the full story. You told it a little bit on a Saturday.
Well, when I first decided to leave society, right, I realized that there was more to life than my job and everything. And I was incredibly frustrated. I'd already had a suicide attempt that had put me in hospital, and I just wasn't doing well in the rat race. And I knew I had to get out of the rat race. I had to get somewhere peaceful, where there was people that were like me, or like how I wanted to be, more like a hippie, sort of relaxed person, chilled, you know, peace man. That was the utopian vision that at an age of 18, 20, whatever, that I had. I didn't have another reference point for a peaceful life other than peace-loving hippies and everybody loves each other, hugs each other and all of that. I thought, why isn't life like that? You know, that's so nice that that's how that is. So I kind of pursued an avenue to try and track that down in this modern day world and involve myself in it, because I didn't like the life that I was in with the city and business and jobs and stuff. So part of that involved getting out of Brisbane, which is a big 2 million people kind of city in Australia here. And I went and bought a house, or my parents bought me a house in the country, right, in a town where there was about 60,000 people. And I was a half-hour drive from the centre of town on the crest of a mountain ridge. And on one side of the house, it looked down into this valley that, like, you were above the clouds and you would look down on top of the clouds. It was so deep, this big gully. And it went up the other side, and it was actually that ravine, or that natural gully, chasm, I guess, or it's like the Grand Canyon, but nowhere near as big. But, you know, and on the other side was the state of Queensland, and that was the natural dividing topography, you know. But anyway, so on one side of my house there was that, and then the road came up to my house. And on the other side, I just had open expanse of farming land, no visible houses, anything like that. And there was Mount Warning in the distance. Mount Warning is, in Australia, it's the Aboriginal sacred men's mountain, right? So when boys come of age, their fathers would take them up to the top of the mountain and teach them all about girls, I guess. I don't really know, but whatever they did up there as Aboriginals, you know. And then there's a sacred women's mountain further down south in Victoria, 2,000 kilometers south. I mean, there's lots of sacred things that.
What is that one called? I'm just curious. If
Mount Goolga.
The men's is called Mount Warning. Mount Warning.
Yeah. Well, the Aboriginal word for Mount Warning is Wollumban.
Okay.
Mount Wollumban, and then Mount Goolga is the Aboriginal word for the women's mountain. But so anyway, when we're looking at the house, right, the real estate agent took my parents and I to look at this little house. And it was in my price range. I could work 3 days a week and afford to pay the mortgage and everything. So I was in a state of just total falling apart. I didn't even know it. I was addicted to drugs. I was drinking heavily. I was a mess. Like my life was a train wreck. but I was only using drugs and alcohol to stave off the meaninglessness of an empty life. And I was hoping that this would give me a new start on life and whatever. But unbeknownst to me, I'd become quite addicted to all sorts of anything. I'd become addicted to coping, really, and to adjusting. But anyway, so we're there on this day looking at the house. I had no shoes on. I'm dressed like in freaking rags. I must have been an embarrassment to my parents, who were incredibly conservative. And I let them talk to the real estate agent out the front of the house. And I went for a walk, had a look in the house. It was just a tiny little thing, cottage. And I went down. There was 3 little steps at the back. And then it went out onto the back grass area, which was this big hill going down to a creek. It was beautiful. And as soon as I stepped my feet onto the grass, they became magnetized to the ground. I could not move them. I tried to pick my feet up off the ground. I couldn't move. I couldn't turn around. And this is the second time that that experience happened to me in my life, but I couldn't turn around. And for some reason, I didn't panic. I just thought, whoa, something's going on here. And I'd had people tell me it's a very high spiritual area, which is why I wanted to move there. And I thought, all right, just relax. Don't worry about it. Just relax. Like, my feet literally glued to the spot. Could not move. It was like somebody driven nails through my feet into the ground. Like, couldn't inch. I looked up and there's Mount Warning straight ahead in front of me. And this thought popped into my head that I have to go and spend the night up there. And I thought, I'm going to go and spend the night up there. And as soon as I had that thought, my feet became free and I was back to normal, right? And so I knew that whatever that was about was for me to make that commitment to doing that. And it took about probably a year and a bit before I finally got around to going. And I was talking to my next door neighbor, Gary, one day, and he said, did you ever end up going up there to that mountain and blah, blah, blah? I said, no, I haven't done it yet. I've been too busy, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you know, on full moons, they have full moon gatherings up there. All the hippies go up there and play music and whatever. And I thought, oh, that sounds awesome. So I said to him, can you drop me at the car park, right? So Mount Warning's about a 4-hour hike to go up. And the last 400 or 500 meters, it's vertical up a rock face. And they have you have to pull yourself up with a chain. They have a helicopter pad in case you have a heart attack where they can get the medevac helicopter. It's not an easy thing. I mean, it's easy enough, but it's not. If you're old and decrepit, you couldn't do it, right? But I couldn't now. I couldn't do it.
That's at the top.
Right. I couldn't do it now. So anyway, I put on my hippie jacket, my jeans. I had some sneakers, I think, and a t-shirt and whatever. And I had a string bag that I used to always wear everywhere with all my bits in it. And because I wanted to make something spiritual out of my night, I took some incense. I had a Mars, something to eat. I had a Mars bar. I had some grapes, I think. I had a few things. I can't remember what else I had, but I didn't really have anything warm. Anyway, when I got to the bit where the chain was, it started to rain and my suede jacket became sodden, right? As I'm going up the chain, I'm thinking, the sun's starting to go down, it's starting to get dark, and I'm thinking, this is a bit dangerous. And I couldn't hear anyone at the top. When I got to the top, I was the only one there. There was nobody else, right? And as the sun set, it became freezing, right? Absolutely freezing cold. And I'm drenched through. This rain it's like a drizzle. It's just a heavy drizzle. And it didn't stop. And then it became so dark that there's no way I could have got myself back down the mountain, right? I knew I was there. The top of the mountain, there's nothing to hide under, right? There are 4 platforms that the National Park Service has put into place because it's the highest point on the eastern coast, right? There are 4 platforms, north, south, east, and west, and there's a little thing in the middle that tells you what everything is that you can see in the distance on the horizon. And people used to go up there to sit on the east-facing platform and meditate, wait for the sun to come up and everything. And my friend Nanda, who'd spent many, many years in India, told me they used to do an open-eyed meditation on the Ganga River there. And when the sun would rise, they would stare into the sun with their eyes open. And you can stare into the sun for a minute without going blind when it's just broaching the horizon line. Once it gets up a bit, it's too bright. And anyway, I'd sort of forgotten about that, but I laid there in the grass, like there's grass about this long, shivering and just like freezing and thinking I could probably die of hypothermia. And then I remembered it. Oh, I had a candle. That's right. I had a candle which I was going to light because it's sort of like holiness or something. I lit this candle. It was the only warmth I had. I lit this candle and I had my hands over it. My hands was like numb from being cold. I had my hands over this candle so it wouldn't blow out. It's still drizzling rain. And the candle wasn't really any help at all. And I thought, I'm going to say a prayer. I really need to pray. Like I wanted to do something spiritual to cement my spiritual thing while I was up there anyway. So I prayed, right? I had a Native American friend from New Mexico, Joey. He was a Navajo Indian. And he and I had spent a few weeks together. He was traveling Australia. And he taught me about the 4 spirits of the 4 directions. The Great Spirit and the Spirit of the 4 directions. So one of the things he taught me to make was a medicine bag, right? This is a kind of a long story. A little medicine bag hangs around your neck. And I used to make them. I'd go to the abattoir and I'd buy offcuts of leather. They'd cut all the leather into usable things to go to the leather mill and stuff. And I'd buy all the offcuts. It was cheap as chips, you know, and I'd sew these tiny little medicine bags and I would sell them at the markets on a Sunday for extra income, right? So, but I made 4 cheap ones. I made 4 out of suede, which was just really cheap. And I wasn't going to sell them. I didn't know. I was just going to give them away. But I had all these medicine bags with me, these 4. And so I tied one. There's these little bushes, little shrubby bushes up there, not big enough to hide under. I tied one in north, south, east, and west in each bush, like a bush in each direction, sat in the middle with my candle, said my prayer, and I asked the spirit of the 4 directions to blow away the rain and to give me a nice clear night and make it warmer and all of this sort of stuff. And then because I was just starting to look into Jesus and read the New Testament and everything, I said a prayer for Jesus to make himself known to me. And if there was something there for me to look at, you know, and all this stuff, because I had a hodgepodge of all sorts of different belief systems, but nothing solid yet, right? Nothing I could really put my finger on. Anyway, so I curled up in the grass. Oh, just before I curled up in the grass to go to sleep, Joey had also told me that when I pray, I'll get a totem to tell me that my prayers have been heard. Right? Totems usually show up in the way of an animal, which will guide me or whatever. I'm sitting there thinking about going to sleep, trying to warm my hands. This big black possum, black as the ace of spades, just came from somewhere on the other side of the mountaintop. And the mountaintop's only the size of a double car garage. It's tiny, like it's basically a pinnacle at the top with 4 platforms. So I don't know where he came from, but he came over and he sat down right next to me, a wild possum, big wild possum. And I'm looking at him. There's just me and him on the top of this mountain, or her mountain. And I thought, I'm going to share my Mars bar with this possum. And it was one of those ones that's in 2 sections in the bag. You open it and you can have half now and half later. So I gave one to the possum. Right? The possum grabbed it with both its little hands and it's like eating into this sugary Mars bar, like loving it. And I ate the other half. And I'm talking to the possum the whole time, like while we're eating the Mars bar together. And then it just finished and it just went off and did its thing. And I thought maybe I should follow the possum. Maybe it's got somewhere to hide, you know. But I didn't. I stayed there and I curled up to sleep in the grass, right? I don't know how long I was asleep. It took me a while to get to sleep, but I don't know how long I was asleep. The rain's still drizzling down. It's freaking cold. I'm shuddering. I tried to put my jacket on one of the platforms and crawl under the platform so that my jacket would be like a roof. But I got too cold, so I had to put it back on even though it was wet. And the platform had holes all through it. You know, it was like an open mesh platform. But anyway, so I curled up in the grass and went to sleep. Let's say 15, 20 minutes later, I get woken up by this wind, right? I'd already prayed to the 4 directions. This massive wind came out of nowhere and it's like swirling. I can see all the little bushes blowing. Everything's going crazy on the top of the mountain like this. And I'm instantly awake and I'm sitting there, the candle's out, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, fuck, how much worse can my night get? It's ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, the wind stopped, the rain had gone, there was no clouds, and it was a perfectly starry night, just like I'd asked for.
Wow.
It was insane.
Wow.
It was just like, right?
Wow.
And I'm saying thank you. And anyway, eventually I went back to sleep. I was still wet and cold, but at least it wasn't raining on me anymore.
Yeah, stars.
And, I think it must have been about 4 a.m. I didn't have a clock or a watch or anything. I could hear all these voices from the track down below, right? It sounded like 3 or 4 people, whatever, coming up. I could hear all this murmuring and mumbling, and I could hear when they got to the chain, I could hear the chain clinking. And I'd already decided that when the sun came up, I was going to sit on the east-facing platform and meditate and pray and whatever. Like, just what else am I going to do up there? But I thought I won't be stuck up. I'll go to where the chain comes, and I'll meet them when they come up and greet them to my mountaintop and say hi, you know, in true hippie fashion. So anyway, I can hear them climbing up the chain. They're nearly at the top, so I go over. And I say to the first guy, hey, how are you going? I'm Dave, like that, and held up my hand to shake his hand. And he goes, hey, I'm North, right? And he shakes my hand. He says, I'm North. and then the girl comes up and she goes, I'm South.
Oh my God.
I know. And then the other one was East and the other one was West. And we all stood. I said to them, I said, look, I don't really know what's going on here. I said, this is kind of strange, but I said a prayer last night to the spirit of the 4 directions to help me get through the night because it was miserable, whatever, north, south, east, and west. And I showed them where I tied the little medicine bags in each bush there. And the 5 of us stood there sort of like slack-jawed. We didn't know what to make of it. They were gobsmacked as well. They were like, you know, like, what? And so anyway, I said, look, I was going to sit on the platform there and meditate. I said, I'd be honored if you'd join me. And, you know, they're obviously kind of spiritual people.
North, south, east, and west.
Right. And they said, that's why we've come up here. That's what we've come to do. We're going to sit and wait for the sun. So the 5 of us are sitting in a row on the east-facing platform, which only just had enough room for 5 people. And the sun is just about to come up. I can see the glow in the sky, and it's coming, getting lighter and lighter, but no sun just yet. And they're all meditating, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to start meditating. So I had no clue how to meditate, really. I'd done a few different meditation workshops and classes and a few things like that, but I really didn't still know what I was doing with it, you know. So I thought, I'm just going to sit quietly. I'll just sit quietly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I just sat quietly, and everything became very serene and very peaceful. And like, you know, the next thing you know, I hear this voice. It's this really high-pitched American woman's voice. And it says, oh, look, honey, there's people meditating. Take a photo. And none of us, because we're meditating, none of us had noticed. Other people had come up the chain, and they've got cameras. They've got all their Nike mountain climbing gear. They've got like latex pants and like every kind of thing. And they're taking photos of us from behind. And I was kind of irate. I kind of like, who are these people disturbing our Zen? You know, like, just can't you see we're trying to meditate? And then I noticed the other 4 guys hadn't been disturbed at all.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
I shut my eyes and ignored them, and I went back to meditating, and they wandered off to one of the other platforms, right? There's no room for our platform. And I could sort of hear them mumbling, and then they went away. And next thing you know, the sun comes up, and I remembered what Nanda had told me about staring into the sun as it rises, right? So I could feel the sun's rays on my eyelids, and I opened my eyes. And as I opened my eyes, the sun was like pretty much fully formed on the horizon. And I was just staring at it. And I heard this voice in my head that said, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, never let go of my hand. And just for an instant, a man stepped out of the sun. Wow. And this came out towards me like a vision, a full vision. Whew, I still get emotional, but a full vision, and held out this hand, and the hand was blazing like the sun, the whole figure of the person. I couldn't tell who it was. I just assumed it was Jesus. It was like a person all on fire, like the sun, just like stepped out of the side of the sun and just went whoop and held out his hand to me. And I reached up. Right? Obviously, I couldn't reach it. It was like at the sun, but I reached up to take the hand, and then the vision stopped. Right? And that's all I had to do. And I knew I knew then and there in that moment that that was Jesus and that I'd started a journey with him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so powerful. And I asked them when they finished their meditation, I said, did you guys see Jesus? Did you hear these words? You know, I heard these words. They were so loud, but they were quiet. You know, they were in my head, but I couldn't not hear them. Anyway, we hung out for a while. We went down the chain together, and I went back to their place. They lived along the road to the mountain. We had mountain beer and stuff. And
they were real. I mean, not real, but
yeah, they were real people. They're just hippie people that lived there.
Wow.
But they heard my prayer. My prayer was heard, and they were given to. You know?
Wow.
It was so beautiful.
Mm.
It was full on, but it's like I went through that whole period of doing things for faith, of like actually getting off my ass and making decisions to do stuff. You know, like hitchhiking down the coast with no money. I had money, but I'd leave it all behind. I'd do it as an act of faith. I'm not taking my wallet. I'm not going to. There was no phones back in those days, mobile phones. I'm not taking my wallet. I'm not going to tell anyone I'm going. I'm just going to hitchhike down to see my friends like an hour and a half from here by car, whatever. And all of these sorts of things. And, everything. I was supported in everything, like totally supported. You know? But I went through a whole period of that. It was quite profound. And looking back, it was just like, wow. But, you know, faith is its own reward.
Wow.
It's like Moses, all the guys that followed Moses, there was a leap of faith to follow him. It was either follow Moses or be a slave, work on the pyramids, I guess, but not much of a choice. But exactly. you don't know what you're getting into. You know, you don't know who Moses is, really.
And it sounds like it's not much of a choice, but it's kind of the same thing that we do now. You know what I mean?
Like, right.
And we go. Right. You know what I mean? Like we're acting like slaves. Like, well, you know, don't really have much of a choice. Kind of do. You know what I mean? Like, just like they went with Moses.
Well, you do have the choice, but the thing is to choose joyously for God. I want to choose for God. I'm glad that I don't have really a choice, but I do have the choice to save myself time by choosing joyously. You know, because I know that by my faith alone, I enter the kingdom of heaven, right? I know that by my faith alone, I am healed, right? Jesus says that in the Bible. Unless you live by faith alone, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven, right? By your faith alone, are you healed?
Are you healed?
Right? Only salvation can be said to cure. You gotta find your faith, because your faith. It's like I had so many moments of crazy stuff I would do, even just little things like the fire. You know, like that's like people would look at me like, "What's this freaking idiot doing on the beach? Look at him, he's burning himself with a hot stick." But to me, it was meaningful. To me, it was like an act of putting myself to the test. If my faith was strong enough, I didn't get burnt like those guys that walk on hot coals. You know? But I started to realize through these little acts of faith that I was supported by something I didn't understand. I couldn't see it. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew there was something there supporting me, you know, especially on Mount Warning. That was the most profound experience I'd had prior to my enlightenment.
It's amazing.
That was like, you know, that was one of the biggies. I'd had one on Island, the same thing, where I literally couldn't turn around. I was looking for a spot to meditate one day in the rainforest, and I got carried. I got picked up under my armpits. It felt like, you know, when somebody picks you up under your armpits, I could feel unseen hands. I could literally feel like angels, or for want of a better word of description, I don't know what it was, but it was like somebody picking me up on each side and carrying me. It's like, come on, Dave, you're going too slow. And I couldn't turn around. For a second there was fear. And I heard a voice that said, don't be afraid. And so the fear just went. I don't remember whether I made a decision not to be afraid. Just said, don't be afraid. And all of a sudden I had no fear. And I felt these hands under me carrying me through this bush track, right through the jungle, way past where I was intending to go, to this spot that was a little clearing on the top of a mountain area there on the island, not very high like Mount Warning, but just a big hill really. A little clearing, and I could see all the way up the Whitsunday Islands, up the passage out into the ocean, and everything was beautiful, the most incredibly beautiful spot. And I was overcome with this incredible urgency to build a stone circle when I got there. All of a sudden the hands were gone, my feeling came back, and I realized I had autonomy again. But I felt I had to make a stone circle. I didn't know why. I'd never made one before. I set about doing that. And as I'm doing it, I'm picking up these big stones out of the bush and making this little circle where I thought I'll meditate in the middle of the circle. And there was a big stone in the middle, which was like my altar stone, I guess. And as I was building it, I didn't count the stones, but in my head, I knew there would be 21. And when I finished, I counted them and there was 21. It was just kind of like weird, but nothing else that day. That was like, I sat there on the rock, on the altar stone, and I had a bit of the Bible. I had a Good News Bible then, I think. I had the Bible, some food and whatever with my bag again. I always had a string bag, and nothing really happened. And I said a few prayers that were really kind of like half-hearted and whatever. And I ended up going back to the staff quarters. It was a resort island. I ended up going back to the staff quarters where I was working. I was a gardener there, and felt a little bit flat after that. But the whole experience leading up to it was kind of like there was something in it. Like I started to feel anxious, like going up the pathway when I decided on my days off, because I tried to meditate in the staff quarters, but there's people drinking and it's and screaming in the hallways, and like young people in their 20s just having fun. They're staff, you know, island staff. It was impossible to sit quietly and meditate. So I thought I'll go up into the rainforest and find a nice spot, and that'll be my spot, you know. And I remember feeling anxious. I started to get out of view of the resort, going up this track, which was well maintained track by the National Parks Department. And I started to feel not right. And I tried to turn around to go back to the resort, thinking that I was having some sort of a incident, you know, and I couldn't turn around. I literally could not turn around. And that's when I heard saying, don't be afraid, and pick me up, you know. I couldn't look down to see my feet, but I would swear to you they weren't touching the ground, even though they probably were. But it didn't feel like they were. It felt like I was being carried along, like I was really light. My body was light.
Wow.
It was just so bizarre. And I seemed to be going really fast, like really almost
like levitating.
I know, it was strange. I wish there was like a little video log and I could go back. You know, maybe when I get to the Bardo, I'll go to the account.
How did I do that?
Yeah, what was that about?
They said that's what Yogananda did too. He had bad feet.
Really?
Yeah, they said he had bad feet, and he didn't want the people to see like him with his bad feet, unable to walk. Like they, you know, like his people would like carry him, so he would levitate. His feet just wouldn't touch. That's what, you know, that's the story.
Right. I had who was it used to look in the Akashic record? Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce used to be able to go into a trance and access the Akashic records, and he was always correct. His prophecies and his tellings were always 100% accurate. It was like he used to get vast sums of money from presidents and royalty and everything to come, and so he could access their records, you know. Which, you know, good if you can afford his services. But I remember there was somebody, Ted did a talk on it. There was somebody, I can't remember if it was in Wisconsin or Byron Bay, that could also do that, or had sporadic moments of doing that. They didn't know how they did it though, whereas Edgar Casey could actually, it was Brent. And he had moments of realizing that he had access to this kind of divine library and he could see what was his particular thing, you know. But he had, what's that? The ash, he had vibhuti, you know, Sai Baba makes the vibhuti and it comes out of the palm of his hands. He puts his hands up like that and he'll do that. And then the ash just rains from his hands.
Oh,
like,
I didn't know he did that. I didn't know. I never heard vibhuti. I knew he would do the jewels and stuff, right?
Yeah, jewelry, funny little trinkets. And I don't know whether that's just sleight of hand. I have no idea.
Yes, so I've heard, yeah.
But he used to make vibhuti, right? And my friend Brian went to India to, not Pune, that was Osho, went to wherever it was, and went to his ashram, and they have this big long courtyard and all the new people line up either side, and he walks down in the morning for the morning prayer. Right, all the new people line either side, and then all the people who are regular devotees, they have to sit behind, so the new people are the most important. Right? And so Baba walks down and he's saying his mantra, and as he says his mantra, he's conjuring up all these different things. He gave Brian a ring, right, with a picture of him on it. But he said, Brian swore to me black and blue, his hands were in the air, his sleeves was like falling down his arms. There was nothing in his hands. He was just manifesting out of thin air. And one of the things that he always manifests for the sadhus, right? So the sadhus, I think it's the Shivites, cover themselves in vibhuti, which is the ash of the dead, right? So they're allowed to live in the cemeteries, eat the sacred offerings on the graves. That's how they live. And they rub themselves, their faces and bodies with the ash of the dead people that are cremated. And they call it vibhuti. I think they mix something else with it so it sticks. I can't, mud or something. I can't remember the thing. But anyway, so Sai Baba manifests all this vibhuti from his hands. And being a bit of a skeptic, I always used to think, it's probably just a trick. You hear about these Indian rope, you know, climbing the rope, and it's just a trick somehow and whatever. But you never know for sure. And then one day, Brent, we were doing a live session in Byron Bay, and Brent used to have these moments of accessing stuff in his head. He was I would call him a kind of a weird cat, right? He was a beautiful guy, lovely. He was my guide for the first 12 months. But he was different. He was different to, probably in the same way I'm different to most people, but he was different, right? And when we used to do our light session, when it used to get to like fully feverish and like full on, like, and there would be lots of energetic releasing, people would have their hands in the air jumping around going woohoo, woohoo, and there'd be light and there'd be people moving in synchronicity and all sorts of stuff. People would fly around sometimes, you know, the spirit would move.
Wow.
It's full on. I've got a video of it once from up. We did a little one up here with half a dozen people, but that's what I mean. Like what we do on Zoom is like 10% of what goes on in our physical light session.
I want to be like, when is that going to happen?
But I'm standing next to Brent, right? And everyone's got their eyes closed and they're all like, woohoo, the music's playing and it's like everyone's just doing their thing. And I could feel this stuff on my face and I'm like that. And I look up and there's vibhuti falling out of Brent, out of the palm of his hand. He had his eyes closed. He didn't even know. And I poked him like that. And he's and then it stopped. As soon as he started looking at his hands, it stopped.
Oh, wow.
It didn't happen again. But there was about 5 or 6, there was probably about 50 people in the meditation. There was about 5 or 6 of us who had vibhuti all over us. It was just pouring out of his hands.
Wow. Oh.
It was just bizarre, you know, like, and I'm like, well, I can't really doubt Sai Baba now. I don't really know. I don't have any credible grounds to say the guy's a fraud.
Yeah, exactly.
But so much stuff. You could write a book this thick. So much stuff would happen with guys at the healing center there, like just metaphysical stuff that you can't explain it. It's all of the spirit, you know, like it was just totally
so helpful, because we're so mired in the material, you know what I mean? It's so helpful to hear this.
You got to get your mind out of the box.
Yeah, but it's so helpful to hear from your mouth, you know, because I
Oh,
have been like wanting like this stuff. So I read all this stuff, read it, and it's helpful. It's so helpful to hear it like right from someone that, you know what I mean? Like, because I can twice
it's
remove.
got to be your living. It's got to be your every breath, every living moment of your life has to be devoted. Your spiritual journey cannot be a pastime. It cannot be something you fit around the rest of your life, you know.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I feel you.
Right.
I
But you line up to that. You know, you come to your spiritual path from like an orthodox, regular human life, and then you gradually true up to it in all your affairs, right? So through the course, all your relationships, your work relationships, home, family, friends, interpersonal and intrapersonal relationships with yourself all get healed and all true up, so that absolutely everything in your life becomes a facet of that one diamond of like your heart sutra that just becomes your living. You know, it's just this incredible, beautiful thing. But it takes a minute for that to happen. It's like you guys have, I mean, I don't really know where anyone's at. I'm just speaking in general, but you guys are at the point where you're embarking upon the process of mind training. You're learning the principles, you're learning the concepts and learning how to apply them, which we're doing in our light sessions and everything else in our thing. And it's like, when we do that, I don't know if what I'm saying is the same thing as what you're hearing me say, which is why sometimes you have to hear it again and again and again. And sometimes other things have to occur. Other things in your lives have to be orchestrated for you to be able to like put the pieces in place, click this way and click that way to finally hear what I've said. You know, I've had people say to me, oh man, I remember you told me that like 5 years ago, and then walking down the street, bam, it clicked in. Something happened and I got it. I don't know where anyone's at with their thing. So I just sit here and I just say the same stuff again and again and again and again. But it all comes from the certainty of the experience that I've had, that the Father and the Son are one.
That's what's helpful.
Right. I've had the experience. I'm awake. You know? I can fall back to sleep again. Sometimes I get distracted by things, but it's like my mind now just automatically gravitates back again. Automatically, boom, boom. You know, I'll see a red Ferrari go past and I'll be like, ooh, that's nice. You know, I'll give it a meaning for a second and I'll wonder how fast it can go and all this sort of stuff. And then a minute, oh, hang on, there is no world. Like my mind.
Yes.
Back. Let go of that. Look at that. Why did I want to give that a meaning? It's like, you know, it's like being a kid in a candy shop. There's no real right or wrong about any of it. You just sort of, you're in the dream, but not of it. But some things in the dream are still kind of, I wouldn't say they're impressive, but they're eye-catching, you know. What do you do with that? I'm in the world, but not of it enough for me. I think if I was in the world, but not of it anymore, I probably wouldn't be able to be here at all. I'd have to lay my body down. I have a great difficulty remembering things, and I have people come into my little shop and stand at the counter people that know me well, and I have no clue who they are. Even though there's a recognition in me that the way they're looking at me, they know me really well, and they're wondering why I'm not responding with their name and I had a girl today turn, hey Dave, how you going? Blah, 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 blah. Started talking, and I'm looking at her going, who is she? Who's this person? Like, where do I know her from? It's like, she doesn't look familiar at all. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, this is the first time I've ever seen her. But she's talking to me like we've known each other for years, and we probably have. You know, I don't know how long I can keep up the facade. Anyway, keep going, push the limits, you know, really push your stuff. Like those lessons in that book, they're just basic prerequisite. Like, do what you got to do, get out there and boogie on down with Jesus. Like
that's really what's helpful, because the things that are said in the course,
yeah,
it's so high that you just assume it can't really be true. You know what I mean? Like there is no
Right. It
world.
is really true.
If you heard that, I mean, like sometimes when we're doing the first 50 lessons, I'm like, after someone says something, it's like, how do we even move on? Like, how do we even say the next line if
One
that's
step at a
true?
time.
You know, like if that's true. And
I know.
and like
That's because you're hearing it.
but it's crazy. It's like, well, how do we even just like, we got to just stop right here.
Right. But some guys will just read that book and they'll be like, none of it will register.
Because it's, well, I mean, in my own association, it's like, it's so high. It's kind of like, you know, just got to, if I got to go on with the rest of my life, I just got to go on. I can't stay here because I got to go to work. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't.
Right.
So again, this is all helpful.
Right.
Because to really take it on, like, no, he's not just, it's not hyperbole. He's not just saying stuff. Like, it's like, this is like real. And that's, I don't know.
It's actually how it is. It is.
Yes, I believe it. Like, I'm believing what you say. Like, believe this.
Right.
Like, oh, okay.
I've had last week I had this happen, right? This happens quite regularly. Course groups, you get all these people that want to conceptualize it and look at it with their brain, work it out conceptually. You can't work it out conceptually. And if you try to tell them they can't work it out conceptually, they get all upset about that because it's like they think that that's all they've got at their own disposal, right? And when you tell them they've got to be miracle minded, it's like, don't tell me I've got to be miracle minded. I don't even know what the miracle is. It's like, good. That's the guarantee that you can be miracle minded. As soon as you think you know what it is, that's not miracle minded. That's control something, right? So I had this thing with this guy and he put up a post and wanted something to it. And I think he gives me a little bit of credo because my posts and whatever. But anyway, so he's put up, has anybody in the Course in Miracles community ever had any of the experiences that are in the book that Jesus talks about? You know, and there's tons of stuff. And it's not that everybody has every experience, but some of those things are going to happen to you, right? And maybe others beside, right? Revelations, epiphanies, and visions and things like that. And I said to him, look, I said, I've had at least a dozen of the experiences that are in this book. I haven't known when they're going to happen. They just seem to happen at random. But they're always in association with my efforts. They're always like, I don't know if you would call them a reward or a confirmation or something, but they always seem to happen. Some of them don't seem to make any sense at all. It's like I was sitting there one day in session listening to Ted talk. I can't remember if I was thinking of anything, but all of a sudden, you know, the big harp, like in an orchestra, and somebody plays the harp. And it was like somebody ran their fingers down the strings of a harp all the way down. I can't make a harp sound. It's much more beautiful. But it was loud. It was like there was somebody playing a big orchestra harp right behind me. Somebody strumming the strings down and back again, all the way along and all the way back, like a crescendo or descendo, whatever they call that. I spun around in my chair looking for who the hell was playing a harp. But it was loud. And I knew because of the looks on everybody else's face, they're all focused on Ted, I knew no one else heard it. Another day I'm sitting there, right? Jesus talks in the Course about the harps of the angels and whatever, right? He also makes one mention to Gabriel's horn in the Course, right? The horn of Gabriel, I think. Gabriel's another archangel who heralds, I forget what he heralds now. Gosh, it was on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, Gabriel is the herald of, I think he's the herald of the Metatron. The Metatron is the voice for God, right? God's literal voice, right? God has no actual voice. God just is. God is the creator. But God has a voice that is like the Holy Spirit becomes the voice for God, right? And the Gabriel, I think, is the herald of, you're about to hear, you know, like, pay attention, God's, you know, that sort of thing. And I heard this horn. It was like a French horn, like a hunting horn. And it went like this in session, and it was like I was expecting hounds and horses to run through the thing. And again, I turned around thinking to see somebody playing a big horn. No one there. And I think Gina was sitting next to me. I said, did you just hear a trumpet or a horn playing? She's like, no. Holy cow. But like all of that was after my enlightenment. It's like when my enlightenment happened, there was so much stuff going on in me. Like just crazy stuff. It was like that enlightenment supercharged my ego, supercharged my awareness, supercharged everything. I couldn't stop laughing for about 4 or 5 months, maybe. Just ridiculous side-splitting laughter where I wish I could stop because my ribs are hurting. Like it was so bad, like hysterical laughter. It would go on for hours and hours and hours. And I remembered the time I'd spent at Nantian Temple, the Buddhist temple, and they talked about the 6 stages of Buddha's awakening. And one of them was a stage of laughing where, you know, the laughing Buddha. And the little thing that they talked about where you couldn't talk to Buddha because he was too busy laughing. Like he just couldn't. And it's like, that's what I was going through. It's like, holy crap, I'm having this stage. I couldn't remember the other ones, but it was just manic, you know, like the energy of it was just full on. I could take one thought in my mind, a thought like a garden pea, and then I could think about that pea. Peas grow on a vine. Vines are a kind of plant that look like this, whatever. Farmers grow peas, whatever. And I could put 50 thoughts together about peas and hold them all in my mind at once. Every single thought. I could have a whole conversation with somebody and hold the whole conversation word for word in my mind. Oh, wow. Like a savant, you know, like a savant can recall things, word, like a photographic memory sort of. My mind like just supercharged, and then gradually it started to, you know, started to fade away because I was not useful to anybody in that state. I was too enamored with my own wow, look what's happening to me today. You know, it's like the experience of the enlightenment of your mind really just blows you. It's like all of a sudden I'm using 5% of my capacity, and now I'm using like 50% of my capacity or something. I don't even know. Like Einstein used to say, you know, like human beings only use 5%.
Like Lucy. That's your assignment.
Like Lucy. It was like Lucy, yeah. I was like Lucy, like literally for a while. And I remember reading stories of other guys like Darjon. Same thing happened with Darjon, his enlightenment. His this is funny, right? So Darjon wrote this book called The Knee of Listening, K-N-E-E, The Knee of Listening. Listening is literally the whole thing. And it's this thick. Teaches you how to listen. It's a whole, I don't know if it's still in publication. If you can get it, it's a great read. I didn't read the whole, I had the book once and I think I read about 20 pages. Yeah. And it was just up, it's like the same thing with Ram Dass, right? So the first book Ram Dass ever wrote after his awakening, right? It's gobbledygook, right? So Darjon's book was gobbledygook. It's his mind trying to come to terms with what's just happened as the enlightenment, right? Trying to put it into context because he's just been blown out of the universe. He can't make sense of it. And if he doesn't ground it, he's going to go crazy and end up in the nut house with everyone else running around going, I've seen God, I've seen God, I've seen God, and not be useful to anybody, which is what happens, which is thanks to Course in Miracles. So Darjon wrote this book that's this thick. 10 pages in, I'm reading this book and I'm like, I know exactly where this guy's been in his head. You know, it's like, I don't need to read any more, you know. And I kind of wish I'd still had that book now. I'd like look at it and see where it goes. But,
it's like Lester Levinson too. He tells his story about how his mind was so like, and he had to read the Times, like the New York Times, to be able to come back. Like he just had to like watch television and read that because he was not useful.
Gotta get grounded.
He couldn't. He calls it what do he calls it? Gutter talk or something. Like he could not communicate to anyone because his mind was so open. Yeah. And the same thing, like he had so much energy. he would just walk the streets of New York. Like he just
Yeah.
and would walk out of the house with like no money and said, I want to go somewhere. But I don't have no money. And he'd just walk out and
Yeah.
someone would walk up to him and say, oh yeah, I owe you some, or whatever. Like all of these really crazy things
Yeah.
just happened.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Helpful to hear these things.
Right. It was exactly the same. I couldn't have a conversation with anyone for about 6 months after my enlightenment. It was impossible. It's not because I didn't want to, just because I couldn't put one concept and another concept together. My mind was like a merry-go-round of things just going.
I didn't notice who you were talking about.
Where? What?
The knee of listening. This
Is
guy.
Is it still available?
Mm-hmm. But I just saw a movie about him.
John.
I didn't know that's who it was.
Samaranch.
They call him something else, don't they?
Oh, he changed his name like 5 times. His name was John. Can't remember his actual name. I think his first spiritual name was Humble John, and then he went to Dar John, and then he went to Adi Dar Samaranch.
I think that was the one, Adidan. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and then he just went to Adi Dar, and then they just called him Dar. So he's had all these transitions, and he I think somewhere in Fiji, and he had
yes,
like 2 or
that's
3
crazy.
Yeah.
It was like a few months ago, maybe like late last year. They had this movie about him, and I just like it was like a live, really? like a stream.
I'd like to see that movie.
It's not really like available. They just had like for a couple of days, we're gonna stream this movie if you want to watch it. And I didn't know who it was or anything like that, but it pops up every now and again. Next time it pops up in my feed, then I'll just let you know. But actually, I'm on their email. I get their email from them. So
okay, I'll tell you what. If you can get it and make it available to watch, because these sorts of things are helpful, because you are going to have these shifts in your consciousness. If you're pursuing this course and doing it properly, you're going to be having these shifts, right? At any tick of the clock, unbeknownst to you, you can have the moment of enlightenment just erupts across the consciousness of your mind, and you're gone from here, and you don't know what to do with that. Having other references of other guys that have been through it, and can tell you what they did to try and get grounded again. You know, if I didn't have all the guys in Byron Bay that were there at that healing center there to support me, I would probably be a homeless person scribbling weird things on walls and just, you know, because my mind just would not have recovered. It's intense. It's beautifully intense. It's like, it's the most thing. You can't describe how awesome and fantastic and beautiful the enlightenment of your mind is. Like God, being immersed in the presence of God, into the Godhead, is beyond, there's no words for it. You can't really talk about it. You can allude to it and you can point at it a bit and whatever, but it's the most fabulous. If I told you that it was going to happen tomorrow and all you had to do was throw yourself under a train, you throw yourself under a train. You wouldn't care less for your body. If Jesus said, hey, we're going to do that again tomorrow and all you're going to do is jump off this cliff, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'm jumping off the cliff. My body would suddenly have no meaning whatsoever to me. It's just doesn't mean a thing. It's just pointless. The only reason my body exists at all is to help facilitate the shift in consciousness to bring about that experience of the memory of God. Now the memory of God has been fully restored to my mind. I have 2 reference points. This physical one that seems to be out here, and the eternal one that's in here in the back of my mind, just shining like a blazing sun 24/7. Like it hasn't left me since that day. The memory of God is just as brilliant in my consciousness or in my mind, in my awareness, as and real to me as all of this is just as real to me. Okay? Except the only thing is I know that this is not real. I've seen it all vanish.
Wow. Helpful.
I know, but that's without training, without help, without mighty companions and everything else. Those 2 reference points, the external and the internal, would have just fried me. I would have been crazy in the coconut. I couldn't be talking to you now. Bizarre. It's just bizarre stuff.
Mm.
So it's like, I think it was, oh no, it wasn't Louise L. Hay. It was somebody like Louise. Oh, it might have been Gangaji, who one of her, I'll use her, but one of the favorite quotes I have of this person, if it is Gangaji anyway, is don't fuck with metaphysics.
Yeah, don't fuck with metaphysics.
Don't fuck with metaphysics. Like, you have to be trained. You have to do it properly. You need guidance, you know. Without guidance, without training, you can just fry the bananas in your brain and you never come back. It's like having an overdose on magic mushrooms and every kind of psychedelic, everything all at once.
Well, you'd be cool, but I mean, you'd be fried, but you'd be cool. You'd be happy, but you would be not of any help.
Oh yeah, I'd be as happy as can be.
Yeah, but of no
like
help.
That happy guy. You know, there's a guy that wanders around my town. He's always smiling. I look at him and I think, apart from seeing my brother in Christ, but I look at him and I see this kind of simple-minded guy, right? He pushes this big, oversized plastic wheelie trolley thing, and he collects rubbish in the street and puts it in. He works for a employment company for special people doing that, but that would have been me. Big smile on his face everywhere he goes, picking up rubbish, putting it in the bin. He's fulfilling his purpose. I've never seen him not smile. He walks past my shop every day.
Oh.
And when I talk to him, I've only spoken to him twice, but when I talk to him, he always leans into his bin and pulls out the best thing he's got to show me what he's found.
Oh.
He's like, look what I found. And he's got this incredible joy about, like, one day he found a ceiling fan. It was still in the box. Like, I think some delivery guy dropped it off somewhere and he's thought it's rubbish and put it in his trolley. And he held up this great big box with this massive ceiling fan. It's all
my heart. My heart.
I know. I wanted to tell him he should probably take it back and put it back, but I couldn't.
It is. Like, it's yours.
I was going to tell him someone's probably looking for that dude, but
you're okay.
What the hell?
Pull out their credit card and buy another one.
Yeah, exactly. They'll pull up the credit card. That would have been, I wouldn't just like that, exactly like that. My parents were quite worried that I would end up like that. They've been through hell. My poor parents, they're still alive, but they're in their early and mid 80s. But the amount of drama that I put them through in my life on my journey, psychological, suicidal, it's like, there is no way I can make that up to them. It's like, I have to make it up to you guys, you know, like, you are them. It's like,
well, it all gets made up. It all gets worked out in the wash, right?
It does. It all gets worked out in the wash. So
yeah, not
too bad, but yeah,
I wouldn't be upset at all if I realized that. If I wouldn't wait, I would. Why? How would I be upset if I knew that there were figures in a dream? How would that go?
Right. Exactly. You would not react at all to figures in a dream.
Thank you.
You were dreaming. Right.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, any questions? I feel that's been fun.
It has been fun.
Angela?
Great fun. Great.
All good.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, do the work. Do the work.
Most important for the joy. For the joy.
Brilliant.
I really want to get into that. It's like, if you guys ever feel like flying out in an aeroplane or whatever and come and do a light session, like, I'm totally up for that.
Oh, it would be cool to fly out for a light session.
Nice.
I'll teach you how to do it. We'll go out into the desert and do it. I'll teach you.
Oh,
if I don't have this place, my house is on the market at the moment. We have a beautiful little healing room up there. It's like a big shed. We've refurbished it all inside with rugs and stuff, and we do it in there. But
cool. Well, looking forward to what's next for you. Putting it on the road. Taking it on the road.
Yeah, me too. I had a visit from Ted last week. Posthumously, yeah. I had a visit from Ted. It's the second time past that I've been visited by him, and I'd have to go back through my posts on my Facebook page and check, but one of them was written by him through me, and I could hear him in my head saying what to write, like as I'm writing.
Oh wow! Did you credit him in it? Because I've been really busy. I haven't been able to.
No, I didn't. No,
I was wondering if I could.
He's no longer a Ted, just like I'm no longer a Dave. It's just mind. Christ
so
mind.
Have to point out which one it was, so I wouldn't be able to tell.
It was the one about. And this is funny because Annie, the exact same morning, like 10 minutes later, it was the one about not adjusting to your pain, right?
All your posts are like
that. Huh?
All your
posts right, but there's a really good one I wrote recently, and then Annie wrote one about the pee under the mattress, and I don't think she wrote it, but I think she transcribed it from one of Ted's talks, because I remember Ted giving the talk about the princess and the pea, which is a book, right? So the pee under the mattress, so she puts another mattress to try and get rid of another mattress, and before you know it, and all the mattresses end up with a bigger thing because of it.
She still can't. She still can't. Still not comfortable.
Still can't get comfortable.
Yeah,
right?
All these layers.
Literally, the pee under the mattress is the call for awakening, and Annie and I put the same sort of almost identical. It's like I put it up, like Ted was. I could feel him in me, like correcting me as I'm going and saying, "Say it like this and do it like that," and I'm like, "Oh." So, but it's fun.
Sweet.
You'll have that when you start doing stuff. You'll have probably me pop through, and I'll like make Jesus or somebody that's already.
Please make the correction.
The other side, right? And the advantage of having me, and it's hard. It's difficult to comprehend, right? So for me, anyway, difficult to comprehend. How useful. The old man used to say, dear one used to say, if you truly knew what you were trying to do, then my teachings would be of inestimable value to you, right? He had an affinity within himself that he knew how valuable what it was he was trying to offer, right? I have that too, but I haven't really connected with it yet. I know how valuable it is. These Zoom meetings are, how valuable the course is, how valuable any effort you can make. Like, if you truly could even get a glimpse of what it is you're attempting to do, you would simply give up absolutely everything to do it, and nothing else would you do. Right?
I heard that quote. I don't know. I don't. Did you say that before? Because I heard that. Maybe I heard it from him, but I heard that.
Right. I've kind of said it before. I think just before.
All right. Right on. I heard it again.
But the thing that's interesting, or it'll probably be a head fuck for you, but it's interesting for me, is that I'm here and not here at the same time, right? In my own mind. I'm out of the dream, but my body residue is still here in the dream. The avatar is still here in the dream. It's the same for you guys, right? You're not here either. But in your own mind, until that experience dawns on your mind, you're not aware of it. It's just a concept, right? It's a bizarre thing. It's a bizarre, because there was a time in my mind where I didn't know I wasn't here either. And if you had told me, I could have understood it conceptually, but I couldn't have connected with it. Now I connect with it, but I can't bring the full capacity of what I'm aware of to be expressed through this avatar, because it's done without words. You know, it's kind of like, I really want to just go, and just give you everything. But because the body is a limit, even in transformation, it's still a limit. You know, otherwise 2000 ago, Jesus just could have clicked his fingers and like the whole thing could have ended and we'd be all back in eternity now. But there's still this whole process. You got to go through the process, because that idea of free will is so sticky. It's like that little tiny mad idea. It taints everything. It's really just like, even if I could give you the whole kaboom like that, you wouldn't hear it. Mm. It's like, I didn't hear it. Ted used to sit there and talk for hours and hours and hours. And for the first 2 years, I swear I had no clue what he was talking about, even though it used to make sense. I'd nod my head and I'd be like, yep, yep, yep. But I wasn't hearing it at a level that was deep enough around the experience I'd had. I was still all up here astral. Woo, yeah, Ted, that's great. Woo. It's like you said, reading the 20-minute book. And it's like, sometimes I read a line and it's like, I can't read anymore. How do I read past that? It's like, it's so profound and it hits you. Boom.
Yeah. How do you move?
How do you even move from the spot? How do you go on with life after?
Yes. Yes. Like, nowhere else to go.
And yet we manage it. We manage it, you know.
It's like in that movie What the Bleep, where he's talking about the two things where the atoms are in the two, or the things are in the two different spots. And he goes,
he says, split.
So exactly. He says, and we're scientists, and we look at that and we go, wait a minute, there's two. It's no, this is over there. It's not. They're in two different places. He says the mind. It's just so crazy.
Right.
People they see that and they go to lunch.
Thing in two places.
Yeah, exactly. But they see that. They're scientists. They see it. They know it. They see it, and they go to lunch. Because you just can't. It's like, I can't go on with my life.
You can't process it.
Yeah, I can't go on with my life. Your life has to end. It has to stop. But it's like, okay,
right.
I gotta go home. I got kids. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh. Right. So it's the same thing with that, when those lines, some of those lines in the course, it's like, we have to stop. What are we doing? We have to just stop.
Right. That's where you do the light session. That's where it becomes active and you have the moment, you know. Those moments are accumulative and they relieve you from the disbelief and the anxiety around what the hell do you do with this teaching?
Yes.
You can't just tell someone there is no world. I can tell you and I can tell you, I can tell you. You can hear it conceptually. You can understand it reasonably by, like, if God's everything and God's formless, how can there be a world? Mm-hmm. Right? You can understand that conceptually, but to actually understand it experientially, you have to have these. And until then, it's going to be this paradoxical kind of conundrum that what do I do with that?
Exactly.
I might as well just go out and get a job as a truck driver and just forget about it, because there's nothing I can do.
There's no world.
You literally need a miracle. You need a miracle, right? Miracles are your right. Purification is necessary first. So we're about the purification. We're doing the work. We're practicing forgiveness. We're doing the lessons, the workbook, the whole thing. We're into it. Just stay with that. Just focus on that. Don't worry too much about the other stuff. The other stuff's kind of good to know, because it's like it'll give you this kind of sense of comfort that other people have been through this and done this. You can do it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember before I found the course, I was going in and out of temples and mosques and churches, talking to all the ministers and monks and like as many people as I could, right, about what the hell the universe is. And they would say things to me, you know, and like I would hear it, but I didn't know what to do with it. I would hear it, I didn't know what to do with it, because my self-experience hadn't caught up with what they were talking about. You know, it was like, okay, other things have to happen in my life first, so I can actually hear it and actually experientially hear it, you know, so that it makes sense, drops in, puts a piece of the puzzle and all of that sort of thing. So, but that's the same with the course. Just because it goes for a year doesn't mean that it's only going to take a year for all that, those pennies to drop, you know.
I tried to do it in less than a year.
Right. Impatient one.
Oh, I know. I don't got time. I don't got a year.
You have to learn patience as well.
I am learning. I mean,
It's good to
yes,
be
I do.
eager and determined, but you have to be tempered
Yeah.
with patience.
No, I get my lessons. It doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Turn up, do your lessons. That's it. Turn up, do your lessons. Turn up, do your lessons. Doing that 20-minute book, it's more valuable to you than you can possibly even imagine.
Yeah.
Like that 20-minute book is just, you know,
I
as
didn't know.
soon as you turn off this Zoom meeting, you're going to go back out into doing whatever, or you maybe go to bed, but you're going to do whatever. It'll be gone, 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 gone. And you'll be like, oh my God, I can't remember what we were talking about now. What? And the chaos will start again, right? These Zoom meetings, and when you're reading your lessons, and when you're talking with other guys about salvation, or just hanging out with guys that are in this with you, there's kind of like this cocoon of light that you enter into, this like bubble of grace. For the moment, you're alleviated from the pain and the struggle of the world, right? Only so that you can learn, right? At some point, you've got to leave the nursery and get back out into the world, having learnt what you've learnt, taken it with you, and begin to apply it to the old chaos, which is why sometimes after an intense period of learning, when you go out again, you go into the world or go and see your family or you do whatever, you come across those same old patterns. It's like, oh my God, my mother always, you know, have you had enough to eat and things. It's like, when is she going to realize I'm 57? Right? And all these little family triggers that from childhood, my mother's still telling me to eat Brussels sprouts, you know, like never going to eat a Brussels sprout, but like these triggers, but it shows you where you're at. You know, family is one of the best sort of like screens in the dream to look at, to see where you're actually at with your own spiritual transformation. It's history. Oh, pardon me. Anyway, I'm done. I think I'm just babbling on now.
Helpful.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
All right.
So, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, Angela.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I love you. Be happy. All right. Catch you Saturday.
Peace. Yep, Saturday. Friday for me.
Friday for you.
Love you. Bye. Mwah.